Growing up, I was always told how lucky I was to have a mom like mine. People said she was the kindest, most devoted parent they'd ever seen. And I believed it. Why wouldn't I? She never missed a doctor's appointment, never let me eat food with too much sugar, and she always kept track of my temperature, even if I sneezed just once. By the time I was 6, I was already on 3 different medications. One for my immune system, one for digestive regulation, and one I just called the blue pill. I didn't really know what they were for. I was too young to ask. Mom said I needed them to stay healthy, and I trusted her. She had this giant plastic pill box labeled with every day of the week. It sat on the kitchen counter like a shrine. Every morning, she would stand there with a glass of orange juice and remind me, "Take your meds, sweetie. We can't risk another flare-up." What flare-up? I didn't remember ever having one. Still, I took the pills and I went to the endless stream of doctor visits she arranged. Most of the doctors seemed distant, cold, distracted. I'd only ever saw them once or twice before we moved on to a new specialist. It was always a rare case or something complicated. I was just a kid. I didn't question it. I remember missing birthday parties, school trips, even sleepovers. Mom would say, "We can't risk germs, honey. You know how fragile you are." So instead, I stayed home in bed, surrounded by books, puzzles, and the soft voice of my mom, always reading to me, always touching my forehead, always reminding me how sick I was and how lucky I was to have her. Back then, I didn't feel unlucky. I felt safe, special, like I was the center of her world. It wasn't until much later that I realized how terrifying that actually was. It started with something small, barely even worth noticing. One morning, I overheard a conversation between my mom and our neighbor, Mrs. Delgado. I was coming down the stairs when I paused. Something in Mom's tone made me stop. She was saying, "Yes, it's been hard. The treatments are expensive, but thankfully there are programs that help." They understand how rare her condition is. Programs? What programs? I didn't think much of it at the time, but a strange feeling crept in, like there was something going on behind my back. Then, during science class in 8th grade, we had a unit on the human body. We were learning about autoimmune disorders, and I casually mentioned mine, though I still didn't know what it was actually called. My teacher, Mr. Langston, gave me a strange look. "What autoimmune disorder do you have?" he asked. I froze. I didn't have an answer. I mumbled something about my immune system being weak and quickly changed the subject. That night, I went home and asked my mom for the first time directly, "Mom, what's the name of my illness?" She looked up from the sink, her hands still in the dishwater. For a moment, her face went blank. Then she smiled too quickly. "Honey, it's complicated. It's not just one thing. It's a mix of syndromes. You know that." I didn't know that. Later that week, I started Googling my symptoms. Well, the ones I thought I had. Fatigue, dizziness, headaches, nausea. But those could be anything. Some websites even said those were side effects of medication, not symptoms of an illness. That made me pause. So I did something I'd never done before. I took one of my pills and typed the name into a search bar. The little blue one. It wasn't for immunity at all. It was for inducing drowsiness, prescribed to people with insomnia or severe anxiety. Why was I taking that? My heart pounded. I didn't know what to think. All my life, I believed I was sick, and now I didn't know what was real anymore. But what really pushed me over the edge was when I confided in my best friend, Kayla. I told her what I found out, half laughing like maybe I was just being paranoid. But she didn't laugh. "Wait," she said, "are you saying your mom gives you meds that make you tired, and you don't even know what for?" I nodded slowly. She stared at me. "Girl, that's not normal. That's not okay." And for the first time in my life, I felt a different kind of sick. After my talk with Kayla, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my head. Every time I'd swallowed a pill without question, every appointment I'd been dragged to, every vague explanation my mom had given me. The doubt started to spread like wildfire. I decided to do something I never imagined I would, go behind my mother's back. I told her I was staying after school for a tutoring session. Instead, I took the bus across town to a walk-in clinic. My heart was racing the entire ride, and I half expected her to appear at any moment, dragging me home and scolding me for putting myself at risk. When I got to the clinic, I hesitated outside. What if I was sick? What if all of this was just me being paranoid? But deep down, I already knew something wasn't right. I checked in and met with a young doctor named Dr. Jensen. He was calm, kind, and most importantly, he actually listened. I explained everything. My symptoms, my mom's obsession with my health, the medications, even a blue pill. He looked increasingly concerned. "Do you have your medication with you?" he asked. I showed him a photo I had taken that morning. He took one look and said, "This is a sedative. It's not meant for long-term use, especially not for someone your age." He ordered a full blood panel, a neurological check, even a stress test. The results came back the next week. I was perfectly healthy. No autoimmune disease, no rare condition, no weak immune system, nothing. Just a regular teenager who had spent most of her life believing she was dying. I stared at the results in disbelief, my hands trembling. Then something darker crept in. If I wasn't sick, then why had my mom made me believe I was? I didn't know how to face her. For 2 days, I walked around the house like a ghost, quiet, cautious, eyes scanning every pill bottle, every drawer, every file cabinet. I felt like I was living in someone else's life, in someone else's lie. On the third night, I snapped. She had just made me tea, chamomile as usual, and set it down with a warm smile. "You seem a little off lately," she said gently. "Are you feeling okay, sweetheart?" I stared at the cup. "Actually, no, I'm not." Her smile faltered. "I went to another doctor," I said. "Without telling you. I had blood work done, scans, everything." Her hands froze mid-motion. "They said I'm fine, completely fine. No disease, no autoimmune issues, no need for meds." For a moment, she didn't react. Her face went pale, then flushed. She opened her mouth and closed it. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and shaky. You shouldn't have done that." "Why?" I said, louder than I meant to. "Why, Mom? Why have you been giving me pills I don't need? Why did you tell me I was sick when I'm not?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. Not this time. "I needed to protect you," she whispered. "The world is dangerous. You needed to stay safe. You need me. That's not protection," I said, voice trembling with rage. "That's control." She stepped forward, reaching for me, but I backed away. "You made me miss out on everything. Friends, school, life. You made me think I was broken. I just wanted to take care of you," she insisted, crying now. "You're all I have." "No," I said, voice cold. "You needed me to be sick, because without that, you have nothing." And for the first time, I saw her for who she really was. Not a devoted mom, not a protector, but a woman who built her identity around a lie. After the confrontation, she shut down. No more pills. No more daily check-ins. No more fake concern. She stopped talking to me unless she had to. It was like she folded into herself, retreating to some hidden place where guilt couldn't reach her. But I couldn't stop there. I needed answers. So I did something I never thought I'd have the strength to do. I started digging. I went through the filing cabinet in her bedroom while she was out getting groceries. I found folders, receipts, letters, and at the bottom of the drawer, tucked beneath old tax returns, was a manila envelope labeled Programs and Benefits. Inside, I found applications for government assistance programs I'd never heard of, charities, support groups, medical reimbursement forms. My name was on all of them. She had been receiving money, monthly support, donations, even free travel for caring for her chronically ill daughter. I felt sick. There were even screenshots of Facebook messages where she talked about me being so brave and still smiling despite the pain. People had sent gift cards, clothes. A woman from church had even organized a fundraiser for Ellie's treatment. Treatment I never needed. I sat on the floor of her room holding that envelope like it was radioactive. It all made sense now. The tears, the warnings, the obsessive routines. She needed me to stay sick because being the mother of a sick child made her feel important, loved, seen. And I had been her tool. That night, I confronted her again. I held the envelope out to her. She didn't even try to deny it. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. "But people listened when I told them your story. They cared." For once, they cared. I stared at her, hollow. "You stole my life so people would like you." She broke down crying, but I felt nothing. Not sadness, not anger, just cold clarity. I finally understood who my mother really was and how much she'd taken from me. After that night, something shifted in me. I couldn't stay there, not under the same roof, not knowing what she'd done. But I also knew that leaving wouldn't be easy. She still had control over my medications, over my medical records, even over how people saw me. To the outside world, she was a loving, selfless mother who had sacrificed everything for her sick daughter. If I ran, I'd look like an ungrateful brat. So I started planning quietly. I began keeping a small bag under my bed, cash I'd been saving, a few clothes, a prepaid phone I bought with leftover birthday money. I told Kayla everything. She offered to let me stay with her just until I figured things out. Every night, I waited for the right moment. But something always held me back. Guilt, fear, that lingering voice in my head. The one my mom planted, saying, "You can't survive without me." But then something happened that pushed me over the edge. I found out she had booked me into a clinical trial, without telling me. A real one this time, experimental treatments for autoimmune conditions I didn't have. She had forged my signature. She had scheduled it for the following month. I saw the papers in her inbox and I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just emotional manipulation anymore. This was medical abuse. That night, I packed everything. Kayla's mom picked me up in her car after dark. I left a note, not out of kindness, but so she wouldn't report me missing. It read, "I know everything. You don't owe me anymore. Don't look for me." As we drove away, I looked back at the house that had always felt like a fortress. It was still, silent. The porch light was on, as always, casting a warm glow over a place that had kept me cold for years. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because I finally felt free. Living with Kayla and her mom was strange at first. There were no pill bottles by the sink, no whispers about symptoms, no thermometer tucked into my morning routine. For the first time in years, I was just a teenager, not a patient. But the freedom came with a new kind of pain. I had no idea who I was without the illness. Everything I'd known, my identity, my routines, my self-image, was built around being sick. Now that I knew it was all a lie, I felt hollow, like my life had been erased. Some nights I still reached for pills that weren't there. My body was fine, but my mind had been conditioned for so long that I struggled to trust it. Kayla tried her best to help. Her mom helped me enroll in therapy. My first session with the counselor felt like peeling off bandages that had been stuck for years. Every word stung. Every memory was like walking barefoot through glass. "I don't know who I am," I told her once. "I don't know what's real." She nodded gently. "That's because you were gaslit for most of your life. But the fact that you're here now, that means you're stronger than you think." It was a long road. At school, I started joining clubs, something I'd never been allowed to do. I made new friends. I laughed at dumb jokes. I even ran laps in gym class without collapsing. People asked about my past, and I didn't know what to say. So for a while, I just said, "It's complicated." But slowly I began to build a new life, a real one. The hardest part? Sometimes I missed her. Not the version of her who manipulated me, but the version she pretended to be, the warm, smiling mom who read books to me at night and said she loved me more than anything. But I had to remind myself, that version wasn't real, and loving someone who hurt you doesn't mean you owe them your future. It's been a year since I left. I don't flinch when I walk past a pharmacy anymore. I don't wake up expecting someone to press a thermometer to my forehead. I don't count out pills in the morning, but I still carry scars you can't see. There are days when guilt creeps in, when I wonder if I abandoned her, if I was too harsh. But then I remember what she did, not just once, but for years. She chose to make me sick, even when I wasn't. Now I'm writing my truth. I started sharing my story online, anonymously at first. I thought no one would believe me, but the opposite happened. People reached out, survivors, therapists, even others who had escaped similar situations. There was a name for what I went through, Munchausen by proxy. And I wasn't alone. That truth gave me power. I testified in a private case to a social worker. There won't be jail time, there rarely is in cases like this. But she's no longer receiving benefits in my name. She can't forge my signature again. She can't touch me anymore. I changed schools. I'm planning to study psychology. I want to help kids like me, the ones who feel crazy for asking questions, for trusting their instincts. Sometimes I still dream about her. In those dreams, she's smiling, holding out a cup of tea, asking me if I feel okay. But I always say no. And I always walk away, because I do feel okay now. Not because of her, but in spite of her. And for the first time in my life, I finally feel real.